All right. This is AshSaidHi, Twitch ambassador, Twitch partner, queen of retro, many names, right?
Many
Tell
names,
us.
many hats, many crowns. Yep.
Who is AshSaidHi?
Who is AshSaidHi? Well, it's a very existential question, I guess. It's a very good question. And I think about it quite often. When I started broadcasting, I definitely wanted people to feel welcome. It's very important to me that people know that their time is valued and that they are important to me. It's like the core of how I conduct myself and how I carry myself. So I feel like AshSaidHi, which is me, like you know me, Finn, like we've met in person before, and every event that I've been to, TwitchCon, PAX, MagFest, GDQ, all that, who you meet is me. It's just me, like a little bit turned up probably, because I feel like when you're broadcasting, people are there for your energy, and I want to exude that. So I feel like the person that I am is like me sharing the things that I love all the time. So that's why I'm very happy, usually very welcoming and enthusiastic and excited to share whatever it is we're doing in the moment. It's really important to me that people know how much I care about their presence within my stream. So Ash is just about, making people feel happy and making people feel welcome and making people laugh. I definitely think that that's a focus as of recent for me. I really love making people laugh. And that's something that I really want people to know about me is like when you're there and you're having a good time and you're laughing, like that makes me feel like I'm giving back in a way that makes people feel like, okay, I see the value in what you do. I see the value in your work. So I guess that's a part of me. It's just I'm someone who just loves to make people laugh, loves to make people feel like they're welcomed, and loves talking about video games, any video games. I know we focus on retro video games, but it could be any video game, really. It could be anything. And I think recently, too, I've been doing a lot of talking about, like, more things, like music and movies and, Star Trek and TV shows and that kind of travel. Like, I try to let people into all of those things that bring me joy because I feel like I can really be myself when I talk about those things.
Why is it so important to you, that giving back you touched on?
Why is it so important to me? Because I feel like in life, that's like a big purpose of life. Just like streaming aside, I feel like we're here on a planet with other people, like being social, and a lot of what we do in life is to give back wherever we can and help uplift people or do our best. I mean, I feel like when you focus on those things, when you focus on helping others and bringing joy, there's so many things in the world that take away that joy, that, gives people like pain, or like, there's like so many things that we could be worrying about, like the job market, or the fact that people can't buy houses, or that people struggle to buy like groceries and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's really important to do anything we can to offset all of those things that we collectively deal with. So that's why for me, like, I don't feel like I would be where I am if I didn't have the assistance of others. And that's why it's a pillar for me to do the same and reciprocate.
You said seeing value in your work, right? You want people to see value in your work. Why is that such a priority for you?
I think I never expected to have an impact or be where I am today. I never expected that in my life. When I was a kid, I always had this idea that life had a lot of this is how it's supposed to be. Like there's a lot of rules that say this is the way things are supposed to be. Certain people have places of power. Certain people have places of, like, oh, this kind of person can build a business. This kind of person can own a store. This kind of person goes to college. There was a lot of that in my mind as a kid growing up, and I never thought that I could be one of those people. So it was extremely important to me when I learned that I control my life to be able to share that with others and not only kind of prove it to myself, but just live that. And one teaching moment that I had in my life that really showed that was when I was in college. I was working full time and going to school full time. And in my 4 years of college, I missed one day.
Just one?
Just one.
Wow.
Just one. It was a math class too. It was like my second math class, I believe, either the first or the second one. And I graduated with a 3.8. And it was very difficult. I went to the hospital twice. One with kidney stones and one for like something else that's like a chronic condition. And I overcame that. And I learned in that moment that if I tell myself I am capable of doing something, I can make it happen. And I didn't see a lot of that when I was growing up. So I make it a point to be in that kind of control of my life wherever I can be, and to accept the things that I can't control and just, do the best that I can. So I think it's really important to show that to others, because many people struggle with those same issues silently. And I want people to know that they can, in fact, do similar things, because it's all up to you.
It's that power of agency, right?
Yeah. And of course, there are things that can get in your way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like mental fatigue and, behaviors that just like take away from productivity, and, like feelings that like, oh, am I enough? Or like, whatever the daily struggle is. And I deal with those things too a lot, but that's okay. And I think that that's also a part of like the human condition that I was kind of referencing earlier when I was talking about, why it's important to give back in the first place.
You mentioned before that you never expected your current level of success. You had a set idea of what certain types of people were supposed to be. What type of person did you think you were supposed to be?
I don't know. I guess I just thought like someone that wouldn't be able to achieve like any kind of attention, somebody that, like I didn't think I would ever hear someone say, oh, I look up to you, or that you inspired me to do X, Y, and Z. I had a job previously where the person that I worked for was very, I guess, it's such a cliche thing to say. They were very demanding, right? Like they just kind of made you feel like no matter what kind of effort you put in, it didn't really matter. Like it was just, that's what you're supposed to do. So I think that because I was so young and informed by those experiences, it made me feel like, well, that's probably how things are always going to be. And I learned that when I left that working environment, that's totally not how things are supposed to be at all. But because I was so young, and it informed a lot of the ways that I saw, myself, especially as a contributor, it kind of did some damage to me that I had to learn how to process. And I think I've done a pretty good job at overcoming some of that and trying to find peace with some of the things that I had experienced. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I think so. Yeah, I think that was pretty good. It brings me back to also, because they kind of blend together. You mentioned that there are certain things that can slow you down or hold you back. One of them being like combating negative feelings about like, hey, I'm not good enough or I'm not able to do this. How do you combat those feelings?
I think that's a great question. And I think that's something that people struggle with often, especially imposter syndrome. At some level, I feel like we all kind of deal with that. And the way that I handle it is, well, first of all, I look back to some of the achievements that I've made in this very short period of time of 5 years that I've been streaming. And I think back like, wow, if I was like 8-year-old Ash and I showed her a video of like all the things that I have done maybe within the last year or so, what would she think? And I think that she would be really excited to see some of the things that I've done. You know, like she would be like really happy, like, oh my God, I can't believe you did those things and worked with some of these people and, you know, had some of these experiences. So I think thinking about that, like what would younger Ash think, helps ground me and makes me feel like, okay, I've done some pretty cool things and I'm worthy of doing more cool things in the future. So that's one way that I kind of think about how I feel in the moment when I'm feeling those feelings. And I think also it takes a lot of practice, you know? It takes a lot of practice to give yourself the grace of being excited about the things that you do and telling yourself that you are worthy and that you can achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. It definitely wasn't that way when I was like a teenager. You know, I always was like, oh, you know, what's the point? Like, what am I doing anything? You know, but then I realized that the joy is every day. Like, you know, the saying where it's like, oh, you don't wait until the rain is over, you dance in the rain, you know? I think that that's something that I feel is very true in my everyday life. It's like there's always going to be something that's going to take your attention. There's always going to be something to work on next. There's always going to be something to shoot for. There's always going to be some opportunity that you might get said yes to, you might get said no to. But I feel like the whole purpose of feeling like you're happy in your everyday life is just enjoying every day as it comes and being like, oh, well, what can I get into today? Like, okay, this opportunity worked out or this opportunity didn't work out, but instead I'm going to do this opportunity instead. So I think that that's really important and key, especially too when you're thinking about like how to deal with feeling like if you're enough, because then you'll realize when you start to, it's kind of like, you know, like when people are like trying to figure out like, how can I make my eating habits better? And one way to make your eating habits better is to write every single thing that you eat down. That way you're actually seeing what it is that you're eating and realizing like, oh, I probably shouldn't have had like 3 Snicker bars, you know, whatever. But like if you start to write it down, you're like, oh, I ate an apple today. I ate a cucumber. I ate a salad. Like, go me. I'm doing great, you know? Like then you'll get into the habit of celebrating all of those things and then throwing away the things that you're like, oh, well, I snuck a cookie in there or something like that. Like, oh, out of the 7 days, I only snuck 1 cookie in there as opposed to eating like a whole thing of Chips Ahoy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that helps people get into the habit. So
personal accountability.
Yeah. Like I have a Discord where it's just myself and I write down everything that I do through the year. And then at the end of the year, I know I have something to look back on and be like, oh, wow, this is how I moved forward, you know? So that helps too.
Can you share an example of maybe something you would write in there?
Yeah. So like, for example, hosting at GDQ 2024, that's definitely something I wrote because that is really cool. You know what I mean? Like that's something cool that I could say, hey, that I've done. Like when I first started streaming, I used to see games done quick on the front page of Twitch all the time. And I was like, whoa, I wonder how you can get involved with something like that. And here I am, like hosting in person and virtually for some of their like events. And now I could be like, oh, wow, that's something I can add to my resume. That's something I'm really proud of because it's a recognized event that people like, you can tell, like if somebody's in the streaming space, you could say like, oh, I did GDQ and they'll know what you're talking about.
One of the biggest fundraisers in the world for video game related charities, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's connect to that because the evolution of your path in life kind of has one foundational element, doesn't it? Like you stream on Twitch, you became partner, you became ambassador, you get all these hosting gigs and, outreach from companies and Twitch itself to do these, extracurriculars, we could call them, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like the root cause of that is all video games. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Video games. And I feel like my college education uniquely prepared me for this. And you wouldn't think so. Like when I was going into my schooling, like my idea was that I would eventually get a job in like the advertising space or marketing or whatever. But I feel like that degree like really helped me prepare for what I'm doing today because I have a degree in communication design and that encompasses advertising, graphic design. I did a little bit of web design. I even did like photography and all kinds of like things adjacent to that topic. And I use all of those skills for broadcasting on Twitch. All of them. Like when we talk about writing for social media and like making taglines and creating call to actions and understanding branding and understanding how to create consistent branding and knowing how to talk to your demographic and knowing how to, engage an audience, public speaking. All of those things I learned in school. All of those things. And I never would have thought that I would be doing what I'm doing today and applying all of those skills and all of the skills that I learned through my, my career, like my career before broadcasting. So yeah, it's really cool that I'm able to exercise all of those skills. And in fact, I still talk to like one of my professors and I was like, yo, do you do like influencer marketing? Like, cause he's like kind of like the head of the department now. I'm like, do y'all talk about like influencer marketing? Cause I really feel like that's something that y'all should talk about. And cause he was like asking me about like AI and all that kind of stuff. Like, how do we use AI? How does it impact us? And all that kind of like that whole thing. And I was like, yeah, it does impact us. And I was like listing out all the different ways and stuff. And then I started thinking to myself like, what we do, a lot of young people want to get into. Like they say that is broadcasting, creating content is, it's one of the most like talked about career paths for young people. So I was like, it would only make sense if we start talking about this academically. And yeah, video games were also a big part of that. Like I feel like the business side of what I do was all influenced by school and work and all that stuff. But the personal side of what I do is definitely all has that thread of video games. Because one thing that I talk about often is like my mom and my dad and their impact on me as people who played video games all of their lives, right? Like yesterday, I texted my mom and I said, did you hear about Elden Ring? And she was like, what? And I was like, there's going to be like some DLC or something. You need to watch this YouTube video tomorrow. And she was like so excited. Like she was like super excited. And I was like, yeah, like I can share those kinds of moments with my mom, right? And then when I talk about that on stream, it's like, well, then that's how people get a little bit of like me. You know what I mean? Like that's how people get a little bit of like personal stuff with me. It's like, yeah, I talk about my mom. She loves video games. I talk about my dad and when we like were growing up and played games and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like the personal elements are definitely influenced because video games have influenced me so much personally. And yeah, I just, it makes me happy. Like, of course, there are other things in my life that's not all revolving around video games, right? Like, I have a very large library. I love books. I went to school for art as well. I love drawing. I love painting. I did photography for a really long time. I love to travel. Like, there's lots of other aspects of my life. Like, we could just like sit here and talk about like, well, if we talk about like TV shows, like I love Seinfeld, I love Taxi, I love, like classic 90s sitcoms, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's tons of things that we can talk about. But video games are definitely a big thread in like my professional career, my broadcasting on Twitch career, and just like personally in life. So yeah, video games are awesome.
When did you fall in love with video games?
I think that when I was younger, like I definitely had some of my most cozy memories thinking of going to my dad's house, playing games with my cousins, and us being up late all night playing like Chrono Trigger or Secret of Mana or something. Or like watching my dad play like Tomb Raider or Bust a Groove or, Wipeout or any of that kind of stuff. Like I feel like I probably fell in love with video games before I could even understand that I fell in love with video games, because like I was always watching my dad play Amiga. I was always watching my mom play Super Nintendo. We played Super Nintendo together. So I mean, I can think about video games for as far back as I can remember being a kid. So yeah, I guess it's just always been a part of me. It's always been a part of my DNA. It's almost like I love video games, so it's like a part of myself. That's a part of me loving my, like, the things that I do in myself. Like, it's just been something that I've always been around. And I'm sure like now, it's like kind of like probably common for people who are, within our same age group, like it's a very common thing. Like a lot of us grew up with this kind of media. And so it's very nostalgic for us and something that we hold dear. So it's always been that way. There were definitely times when I stopped playing video games, though. There were definitely years where I stopped, and I only stopped, like, for example, when I was in school. There was no way I was going to be able to balance that and school. Like, there was no way.
Did you play games at all? Or
very, very little. Very, very little. Because I would work. I would basically work the morning shift, like 7 to 4, 8 to 5. And then I would go to school from like 6 to 9. And then I would take the train home. And every little in between, like when I was traveling to school or traveling home from school, that's when I would like sleep, like on the train or the buses or whatever. And then when I got home, I would like take like a little cat nap, and then I would get up and do homework. And that was like an everyday cycle for 4 years. So it was very rare. Like I probably had maybe during the week, like one day where I had nothing. And that would be like the day to catch up on sleep or whatever. And if there was ever a time like I was on the train and I was like coherent and awake and I had the energy, I would probably play like my DS or something. Like that's as far as it would go.
So you've been in love with video games for as long as you can remember. But right now on your Twitch channel, it very much, as we touched on earlier, has a pretty strong focus. Why retro versus, say, conventional modern gaming?
Retro is, to me, more accessible. Trying to play modern games on my computer, like, is expensive and very demanding. And there's always something new coming out. It's almost like I can't get comfortable with the cycle because the cycle is so short and there's always something happening. Whereas with retro games, we can sit and enjoy and savor that as long as we can, because as long as we want to, because like those games already came out, like their cycle is over, like it's out already. Like Doom has been out like more than 20 years, so it's like if I want to sit and enjoy that for a while, like I don't have to worry about like something else coming out and like taking over. Like I get to enjoy those games. And also I think it's a really easy way to connect with people. And you talk about this, you say like it's like, you know, just chatting, but with retro games in the background. And I feel like a lot of people who focus on retro games feel that kind of way. It's really easy to connect with people through retro games. For example, we did Dawsember, right?
Mm-hmm. You want to tell us all what that was?
Yeah, Dawsember was a month-long celebration of DOS games where the community, the retro community, came together and focused on DOS games for the whole month. And we had a hashtag, we had a website, we had merch, and there was like a directory where you could find anybody who was participating in Dawsember. We had like a hashtag and all that kind of stuff. And it was a community driven event that was done in the retro community to kind of bring people together for just like something that we all commonly love, which was like, you know, PC DOS games. And that was a really amazing event because, like I said, we all came together. I love community driven events. I love meeting people. I love talking to people. And I love when people are enthusiastic about the things that they love. And I felt very enthusiastic about it. I didn't grow up playing DOS games. I didn't have a computer that could run those kinds of games when I was a kid. I only had consoles. So that's also my way to learn about that space and to learn about games that I might have missed out on. And I think that's also the fun in it too, is like exposing yourself to things that you never got a chance to play that everybody holds dear, right? Like things like Gabriel Knight, for example. That's like one thing I didn't grow up with, but an event like that would expose me to things like this. And I really love it because it's how I meet people and it's how we connect. And I really, really love that. Like it gives me energy. It's like, you know, like some people say like when you go to a party, like that kind of zaps them of their energy. Like to me, it gives me energy like that. It's the opposite for me. So, I think that's the big reason why I pick retro. And also it allows me to showcase myself through games. Like I get the opportunity to talk about my dad and his love for Amiga. I get the opportunity to like talk about like Robotrek, for example, and how me and my mom played that game together and had a hard time at some of the puzzles or whatever. And then like, you know, reminisce about that. And then people will start telling me their own stories and they'll start opening up and telling me about their experiences and why things like this are so important to them. So like, for example, last night we were talking about Diablo and I had just recently played Diablo 1 for the first time and beaten it last Monday. And it quickly became one of my comfort games because I'm a loot goblin and I love treasure. And so everybody was telling me, like, Ash, you're going to love D2. You're going to love D2. And I'm like, oh, my God, I can't wait to play D2. And then there was this whole, like, 15-minute conversation about D2 and, you know, the mechanics and the remaster version and why this one is better and how there's, like, more, like, classes and all this other stuff. That to me was awesome because then people are opening up about the things that they love and they're creating conversation. Then they're talking amongst themselves. They don't even need me anymore. They're just talking amongst themselves. So I love to facilitate that. And I think retro does an excellent job at facilitating that. And there's always something for people in retro. If I play Mario, there's going to be people for that. If I play Final Fantasy, there's going to be people for that. If I play, you know, whatever, there's something there for everybody. And that's, I think, the beauty of it. You know, we get to learn about each other through these experiences.
Do you think that with retro, it's much easier to make these connections with people because of those strong nostalgic feelings, or do you think there's something else to it?
I think it's a part of it for sure, because it's like when you go to a party, how do you get people to open up? You get them to talk about themselves. You get them to talk about the things that they love, right? The things that they feel comfortable talking about. So I definitely think that there is an aspect of that. And I also think that it also depends on how you handle it, because there are ways where people could feel like there's a gatekeeping aspect to retro. Like if I don't understand how emulators work, or I don't understand how to hook up real hardware, will I be welcome in this conversation? Or another one, if I've never played a game that everyone knows, will they treat me like, oh, well, how do you not know about that already? But my approach is to make sure that people know they can ask any kind of question and not be met with judgment about it. And I've received that kind of feedback quite often. Like somebody will be like, oh, what's Amiga? And I'll be like, oh, let me tell you. Let me give me a reason to be excited about these things. You know what I mean? And let me show you why you can be excited about them too. So there is an aspect of that. But I think also in this space that we're in, generally, Twitch is about gaming. Twitch is generally about gaming. I mean, it's absolutely about more than gaming, but generally, I feel like Twitch is about gaming. So with retro games, there's always going to be some aspect that someone can relate to, and that way open up, or just even want to just listen, you know? So,
you touched on a word that I think is really important here with your answer there. Relatability. How important do you think that is as a Twitch streamer to be able to relate to your audience?
ooh, you know,
Or them to you?
yeah. I think the most successful people do it, and they do it with a finesse. I think that there's definitely room for people who are looking to just put on a show and it be a one-way interaction. There is room for that. Like when we think about like maybe something that feels more improv, something that feels more like TV, there is room for that. But I truly think the magic of Twitch is connecting with people on like a both, like, you know, reciprocating level. Like I give something to you, you give something to me. And I think that being able, like, it's kind of hard to relate to everybody, right? Like not everybody is going to relate to, you know, me as a gamer, as a woman. Not everyone's going to be able to relate to me as a gamer, you know, as a, you know, person of color, as a black person, maybe as a person from the Caribbean. But I do think that if you want to see some kind of success, or you want to see some kind of, you know, growth, being able to be relatable is important. I think it is important. So for example, right, I don't curse on my stream. I do not use foul language unless it's something like is really taking me by surprise, or like I just like it slips, like it, and that has, I could count on one hand the amount of times that has happened. And some people would say that that makes you unrelatable. Some people say that that puts you in a box because it's not real, like that people don't really behave that way. And I disagree. Like I feel like, you know, it's also in the way that you treat people. It's also in the way that you carry yourself. And I have found for me that people tend to, like, the growth is slower, you know, because it's not like so controversial. It's not so like, you know, edgy, but people tend to stick around longer because I'm not putting on like a character. I'm not putting on a persona. Like it's just me. Like we're just talking. And of course, like outside in real life, like there are times when I do curse more, but you know, generally, like, you know, this is how I am. This is how I speak.
I was going to say, you view Twitch as a more professional setting with the way you comport yourself.
Oh, it's absolutely 100% a workspace environment for me. 100%. And that's why I conduct myself the way that I do. It is. Because I just feel like it's much safer to go about it that way, because everything that you're doing is recorded. Everything that you're doing is seen by people that you have no idea who's watching. You know, could be marketing people, could be, you know, CEOs, it could be, you know, kids, it could be anybody. So I think it's important to carry yourself with care.
What made you decide to stream on Twitch?
So I didn't know where I wanted to start streaming when I first started the idea of having content creation be like something I wanted to do. And I had a friend that streamed on Twitch, and I made the account to follow him. And I did watch him. Like, he's like a competitive like fighter. Like, he did like Killer Instinct. He did like those kinds of games, Street Fighter, Killer Instinct, all that kind of stuff. And when I made the account at first, I was like, I do not get this. I do not understand Twitch. Why do people want to watch other play video games? I could play video games myself. I don't need to be watching somebody else. Did not understand. And then like a few years went by, and at the time when I was working, I didn't have a good work-life balance. And then I left that job and got a different job. And then I had more of a work-life balance. And I was like, I always wanted to get into content creation. Like, I knew I wanted to make videos. I knew I wanted to go on YouTube. I knew I wanted to do something. So I was like, let's try this Twitch thing. Let's see what that's like. And so I got a capture card. And I only had my Mac at the time. And I didn't have a microphone. I didn't have a camera. I didn't have anything other than the iMac and my Switch and the capture card. And I was using Elgato HD, like the Elgato capture program, which is like, oh my God. At the time, OBS wasn't compatible with Mac. So I had to use that program.
Oh, wow.
Or at least I didn't know of any other alternatives. So I was like, okay, let's try Breath of the Wild. And I did like Breath of the Wild. I think I did like an hour. And then I did like Tetris 99. And I made a little video that showed how to attack on Tetris 99. And I was like, okay, that was kind of fun. So I did that for a little while, like literally like a couple of days. And then I was like, I have this big video game backlog and I have my Super Nintendo Mini. Why don't I stream from there? And so I did like Kirby, and I did Super Mario 3, and I did Zelda, original Zelda. And I was like, oh, well, these retro games are fun. Like, I'm going to stick with that. And then I started meeting people in the community. And then it just like picked up. Like, it was just like, okay, I feel like this is my home. Like, all these people are really nice. Everybody's helping me learn how to stream. Like, that was kind of the genesis of how it all started. And I always knew, like, okay, so you know this, but like AshSaidHi is an acronym of ASH. ASH, Ash is my name. And I know that I wanted to have like a tagline at the end of my video. And this all comes back to like your branding, your marketing, and how you want people to perceive you. So I was like, I wanted to be friendly. I wanted to feel like, oh, it's like we're neighbors. So like if you see Ash, you know, oh, she told you hi, don't forget to tell her hi. And then you would remember that and then be like, okay, that recall, oh, let me go and check out this channel. Somebody told me about this Ash person. Oh, don't forget to tell your friends Ash said hi. Like, oh, she's like my friend or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of where that came from, is the whole idea of like, you know, like friendliness and welcoming. So that's why it's like, don't forget to tell your friends Ash said hi. And that's how I would end all my videos.
That goes back to what you were saying earlier about your degree and the skill set that you were able to bring to this. Does that mean that you had a pretty clear idea of like branding and like the vibe you were trying to put out or that early on?
Yes, 100%, absolutely 100%. I sketched everything out. I went to one of my friends that I went to college with, and I was like, "Can you help me, create this branding? Can you help me create like these Photoshop files?" And I knew I needed to have a call to action when I started, because I needed like the brand, like I needed like the logo, I needed the look, and I needed the call to action, so that way when you have those moments that you repeat that stay in people's mind, it would be easy to understand and easy to remember. Like that is extremely important when we're talking about advertising. Most of advertising is understanding demographics and psychographics and understanding how to speak to your audience. Advertising is a lot, it's mostly emotional. You're telling a story and you're creating a concept. And if you don't have a strong concept, people are not going to understand the story that you're trying to tell. And if they don't understand the story that they are trying to tell, they're not going to get that emotional impact, and they're not going to remember, and it's just going to fade away. So having that deep connection of understanding the people that you're talking to and how you're speaking to them and creating that relatability makes things like stand the test of time. It's extremely important. That's why you'll see like some ads that are able to run for a really long time, because it's hitting people in a way that makes them feel like, oh, this is not an ad. They're telling me a story. They're telling me like a message, and I feel that message. And those are the things that stick with people. So like if I like, one thing that I used to do a lot when I was in school was like I would take a print ad, or I would look at a 30-second spot or like a 15-second spot or 60-second spot and try to understand what the story behind it is. Like, what is the story that they're trying to tell me? And then through that story, what is the action that they want me to take through this story? And I got really good at doing it. Like we would have those discussions in class all the time. Like show us a print ad and be like, okay, well, what's the concept here? Okay, the concept is like in this ad, like for example, let's take like Fresh Step, for example. I had this ad of Fresh Step always like stuck on my wall because I thought it was so funny. And it was like a cat who was like holding in, like it was doing like the pee-pee dance, right? You're like, what the hell? Like, what are they trying to say? Like, why is this cat doing a pee-pee dance? Well, it's because it can't find the litter box. Why can't it find the litter box? Because the litter is always fresh and clean. Why is the litter always fresh and clean? Because of Fresh Step.
It's that, that's very similar to conventional wisdom in content creation, especially when it comes to thumbnails and titling. They want you to create a question in the mind of the viewer that needs an answer immediately. So they click. So how do you try to tell that story with your marketing or branding, or how do you target those emotions as part of it?
When you look at my logo, like the new AshSaidHi logo, because I didn't always have that logo before. Like I started out with one that was kind of like more like it's like a type mark. Like it was like a just typography that was the mark. And with my new one, it kind of feels like highlights. You know the magazine highlights that we all had as a kid? Scholastic, highlights.
I don't remember those because almost all my magazines were video game magazines.
Gotcha. Okay. So Highlights magazine was a magazine for kids in elementary, junior high school that kind of like hyped up the love of reading and, had like little activities and all that kind of stuff. And, we would do it in school and color and all that kind of stuff. But the actual logo itself of the word highlights has a very hand-drawn feel, like somebody like writing the word in marker. And that is how I created my AshSaidHi logo with the speech bubble. It's very hand-drawn, feels very organic. Like and approachable, right? Like it feels very approachable. It's not like a fancy typeface. It's not like got a lot of like linear lines or whatever. It's like very like this is like hand drawn. So there's two reasons for that. One is because it looks like that kind of like highlights magazine, which is a moment of nostalgia for a lot of people. That kind of harkens also back to like PBS and Mr. Rogers, like Sesame Street, like not that
Reading
I'm like
Rainbow.
aiming for kids. Yeah, not that I'm like aiming for kids, but those are all things that we grew up with, right?
True.
So that we recognize those. And also because with the like organic shapes, it feels like very soft. It feels like very like, approachable. So that's kind of the reason why I went in that direction. And also I wanted a way to incorporate the speech bubble because it's Ash Said Hi. Like it's like I want the hi to really be, highlighted there. So that's kind of the reason why I went with that mark and the reason why I went in that direction. And the colors that I chose, like the pink, the purple, the blue, well, the purple and the blue also is a reference to me being a Twitch ambassador, but it's also some of my favorite color combinations. So that's the reason why I picked those. It's because it's also not just not just recognized for the things that I love, but also recognition of like the things that I have accomplished in my time of streaming. So it's kind of like a marriage of all of those ideas. But you wouldn't think about like all of those things if you just kind of look at it. You're like, oh, it's just like a really pretty, like, it's just like a really fun, like hand drawn, like kind of approach. But it had a lot of thought put behind it. And that's kind of what I want to impart with people of how they should be thoughtful about their brand instead of like, oh, I'm just going to, slap something together and it's just going to, it's what I'm going to put on my merch or whatever. Like there's like thought behind it,
Speaking to people who are considering being creators or current creators, how important do you think branding is? Who should that be important to?
It should be important to any creator that wants to consider making this their career path. And of course, it's not to say that things can't evolve over time, but just like with a brand, you have to be very careful about how you approach that. Let's think about Pepsi, for example, and how when they changed their logo, people legitimately got upset about it because you're changing something that they have grown to know and to love over decades of their life. You know what I mean? Like people get uncomfortable or upset about those things because change is not easy to always accept. I think that when you're creating a brand as a content creator, you should be thoughtful about what you want people to know about you before you open your mouth. Like these are really, really important. Hold on. These are really important things that you have to ask yourself when you're creating your identity. Because consistency is extremely important for success. I think in my version of doing what I do every day. In my version of doing what I do every day, consistency is extremely important for success. So if you don't know what you want to do, or you're always changing colors, you're always changing the way that you speak to people, how are people going to know what you're about, who you are, or understand what they should even receive from you if what they're getting from you isn't consistent? Like it creates distrust, I think, even in a subconscious level. There's like some kind of, well, I don't know if I can even really rely on this person streaming every day if they can't even figure out what it is that they want to do or say or be about.
So with consistency, you're touching on more than just, for example, having a set schedule. You're talking about consistency in the way you portray yourself and act. And Does that include your branding and other things like that as well? Like, is that all cohesive?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yes. Like if you go to my website and you go to like my YouTube, you go to my Twitter, I use the same profile picture for everything. Whenever people ask me to be a part of their panel, like I use the same profile picture for everything. Like my banner is the same for everything. The colors that I choose is the same for everything. But yes, to your point, also the way that I carry myself is the same for everywhere that I go and everything that I do or everything that I try to associate myself with. Like, so I'm not going to do a sponsored stream for like a caffeinated drink brand, for example, because I don't drink caffeinated drinks. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't be right for me. And it's not healthy for me either. Like I just cannot, my body cannot take it. So I wouldn't tell people to drink this product or use this product if I myself cannot. Now there are others who that is right for them. So in conducting myself consistently in that manner, people could understand, oh, this is what Ash is about. And I think that there's also power in words and power in action. So if I tell people, oh, I'm the queen of retro and I love retro games and I do lots of retro adjacent things, those words mean something. It's not arbitrary. It's not just like me just saying, oh, I wish I was, I wish I was about retro, or maybe I'll stream retro some days. It's no, like that's when you go to Ash's channel, I can expect to see like Amiga and Sega Master System and, all these like things that she talks about. Like I can expect to see those things. Now, I understand that some people might see that as like putting yourself in a box, or it's not that serious. I just want to have fun, like I just want to go on Twitch and vibe or whatever. And that's fine. That's fine. That's great. That's totally valid.
It's a different kind of consistency, isn't it?
It's a different kind of consistency. Yeah, it's just different. And I think that that's really important to do in our space. I think one thing that's really important to do in our space is to accept that there isn't one method of success, and to celebrate when people can achieve success in ways that are different from maybe the ways that you've done it or I've done it or anybody has done it. Like it's really important to empower people and show others that there's lots of room for everybody.
So touching back on Twitch, let's say you're talking to someone who's never seen Twitch before. How would you explain the power, the beauty of Twitch to someone who has no idea what it is?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. And that's a question I honestly wish Twitch would tackle more. And by saying that, I wish that I could see that kind of marketing for Twitch in the general public, like we see sometimes for YouTube and Google and like all these other things. But if I met somebody who never heard of Twitch before and I had to explain it to them, I say, do you love TV? Do you love TV that you can kind of, instead of just watching the actors on screen, you can actually like sit down and have a conversation with the people that are on the screen? That's kind of like Twitch. And then you marry that with whatever it is that is being discussed or happening on screen at that moment. And Twitch can encompass not just playing video games, which is what it started out as. Twitch started out as Justin TV and, started out with video games being the main part of the platform. But now it has grown to, you can find music on Twitch. You can find musical performances. You can find exercising. You can find cooking. You can find art and drawing. And people are recording and sending a signal out to what they're doing live. And you can have an instantaneous conversation with them in that moment. So think about maybe if you grew up with America Online, AOL chat rooms, except one person has the screen and everybody else is in the chat room talking to each other at the same time, including the person that's on the screen. And we're all collectively in the shared space together. That's how I would describe it. And then I'm sure that would open up 100 other questions, but really positioning it as we're in a shared space having a conversation. And sometimes it's not even like there are channels on Twitch where it's not really a conversation. Like, let's think about like some of the spaces where chat moves really fast. But that's not really the bulk of Twitch, right? That's not really like the bulk of Twitch, I feel like, is the more, couple of hundred people in a room and we're all having a conversation kind of like together. Like, that's really the bulk of Twitch. And the ones where it's like a stadium where people are all in a stadium watching like the one person performing, like that is more of a unique scenario. So I would say like there are those kind of spaces, but then there's also like the smaller spaces where it's more like we're all kind of just like in a room chilling on the couch, hanging out together, just talking about whatever it is we're talking about together.
Do you think Twitch is a healthy supplement to people who are craving social interaction?
It's a very good question. I think, I hate saying yes and no, but I truly believe that both live on Twitch. Yes, in a sense where obviously we saw a big boom when COVID happened and everyone was in lockdown, right? Not just people looking to stream, but people just looking for some kind of interaction, right? And you can't get that same interaction on YouTube, right? Because it's just you consuming videos like you would if you're watching TV. So I think yes, but the reason why I also say no is because of problems that we hear about with like parasocial interaction and things like that. It's kind of like, it's like, imagine being like Tom Cruise, right? And you're streaming on Twitch and there's people who are like so enamored by the fact that they're getting to speak to Tom Cruise that they forget that Tom Cruise is a human being, right? And I feel like sometimes as people watch their favorite broadcaster for a really long time, it starts to turn into that moment of, oh, I forget that I'm watching a person and I just love what they do so much that now like it's turned into something else. Like it's turned into like a, whether they really, put this person on a pedestal or like whatever it is, like it sometimes streaming does turn into that. And you have to be really careful to understand how to balance those scenarios when they happen, because it's like, you can become a celebrity, but a celebrity that is accessible to people. You know what I mean? That's like really accessible. So imagine like, any of these people that we see on movies, but it's like we can also talk to them at the same time. Like it sometimes turns into that. And it's really interesting to watch when that sort of thing starts to happen. And as long as you are mindful and like understand like, and I think that's the reason why I also kind of treat this like a workspace, is because it helps set that boundary and let people know that, hey, I'm a person and I know you love watching the show, but there are certain rules that we have to have in place and there are certain ways that we have to speak to each other and interact with each other to keep both of us safe. So that's why I think yes and no is the answer to that.
How do you find is the best way to create that balance with the social and parasocial nature of online interaction and content creation?
Just like I said, I feel like for me, and again, I understand why people put on a persona or they have like a certain, barrier to information that they share. But I think being myself helps, because sometimes when people message you or contact you when you're not live, they might get a different result, or they might get a different interaction than they're used to when you're live on camera. So I think for me, that's one way. And I think setting those rules and those boundaries from the start and not wavering with them is really important. And I think that setting a standard for the kind of chat interactions that you allow to happen, that you allow to have in your chat, is extremely important as well. So like, if somebody all of a sudden started coming into my chat and saying like, hey sweetie, hey cutie, hey this, hey that, I'm not gonna call it out and be like, oh my God, that's disrespectful, but I will delete the message. I won't say like, oh, don't call me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I also want people to feel like, okay, I'm putting on a show. Like I am, performing for you all. I am, playing the game and being excited and all those kinds of things. I am doing those things. But I think it's also important to not like break it's like when a costume character takes off their mask. You know what I mean? Like when Mickey Mouse takes off their mask, you see the person's head underneath. Like that breaks the whole, essence of what you're doing. That really breaks it. So I'm not going to stop the show to be like, okay, mods, do your thing, or like get on a soapbox and start talking about why all this is wrong. It's just, we're going to remove that. We're not going to tolerate it. And then we're going to continue. And we're going to continue to entertain and do the things and show reasons why we belong versus things that we don't want. You know what I mean? I'm always about highlighting. Let's highlight the good things. Let's focus on the good things, the things that we can control, versus giving attention to the person that's seeking attention and letting that distract from the space that we're trying to create. So I think that those are really important.
You mentioned something I would like to touch on because I think it's an elephant in the room a lot of people don't like to talk about. You're a Black woman who streams on Twitch, putting yourself out there very visibly. What would you tell other people who fear putting themselves in that position on how they can handle that kind of extra attention? Because we do know that people like to laser focus more on your identity and not you as a person instead. What would you tell those others who are interested in what you do and perhaps pursuing it themselves?
That's a very, very excellent question. It's awesome. And I think that's why the heart of what I do is doing things with purpose. You have to understand that this career path encompasses all of those things. You have to understand that that is a part of the job. Having the spotlight on you, having attention, and whether that attention is good or bad, it's a part of the job, right? Just like understanding that a part of the job is if I stream a certain kind of game and then I pivot to a different kind of game, that viewership will fluctuate. That is a part of the job, and I have to accept that and understand how to pivot when things are not going the way that I want them to go, or, take everything as a learning experience. So if there's somebody that is, in a similar space as me, I would definitely say to them, focus on what you can control and be the example that you want to see. So the example that I want to see is somebody who is confident about the things that they're doing, that does things with integrity and is honest and is out there to help others and focuses on the good aspects of the career path that we've chosen. Integrity is extremely important, especially that, because I feel like, especially in this space, it can become easy to focus on the issue of the moment or the drama of the moment or the negative aspects of what we do, and use that as a catapult to bring more attention to our channel or to our social media or to our presence. And while that can create visibility that is heightened in the short term, in the long term, I think it damages trust. So that's why I think it's really important to be thoughtful about what you're doing and to understand why it is you want to do this. Like, don't get into this career path if you are not prepared to deal with good and bad. And when you are dealing with the bad, how do you turn it into a situation that can be a good learning experience for anybody involved?
So integrity is a big part of that. And I feel like a lot of people may counterpoint you and say easier said than done. So how do you yourself control the moment there? Like when you're faced with these challenges, how do you control that moment?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. I think for me, it's like, when you write an email to yourself, you write an angry email and you send it to yourself, and then you think about, like, you wait like a couple of days before posting it. I think that's like a part of it, right? Like, it's like, if I have like all these things to say about something that I really like, there are so many things that I see constantly on my timeline that I'm like, if I engage with this, what is it going to say about me? What is it going to say about me? That's the driving factor that helps me to stay grounded. If I respond to this thing, what is somebody that has never met me before, knows nothing about me, is going to think about me if they see me engaging in this?
Do you ever turn those initial reactions inward to hear what they would sound like to someone else? So for example, if you wanted to retort and then you imagine someone saying that to you instead, is that one of the methods you're speaking on, or is it something different?
I guess it's something different. I mean, that could work. I could see how that could be useful to people. Yeah, absolutely. But I think for me, because I'm so practiced at this, like this is a skill that I have been developing for many, many, many years. Because like I was that person that reacted in the moment and then regretted the way that I reacted in that moment. So I think it's just, what I think about? I guess if I said something and somebody saw it 10 years later, what would they think? Because essentially that's what happens on social media.
Yeah.
Anything that you say and you do is recorded permanently, whether or not you think it is or not. Somebody's got it screenshotted. Somebody's got it written down. Somebody remembered that. Somebody saved that. So that's how I think about it. Or like if I said something and somebody's like, I always imagine if they can, they will. If they can, they will. So anything that I say, somebody's going to screenshot, like if it's about somebody else, they're going to screenshot it and send it to that person. That's how I imagine it.
Do you think the internet has made it harder to overcome those mistakes, or is it just put a spotlight on them? Or is it both?
I think social media has definitely heightened people's sensitivity to things like that. Because now, where a comment could have made like maybe in an emotional state, or just like something somebody said because they were just like reacting to something in the moment, now that thing is like there forever, it's like that person really meant what they said, even if it's like I was just having a really tough day, or this kind of thing is a super trigger for me. Now it's like it's never going to go away because it happened. Like, I feel like there are some aspects of the internet that don't allow people to be people anymore. And whether or not that's right or wrong, I don't know the answer to, but it is the way that it is.
Why'd
so
you
we
pick
have
the
to
Queen
act
of Retro?
accordingly. Because it rhymed and it sounded nice. That's really it. That's really it. I just wanted something that rhymed. I wanted something that rhymed because, like I said, with my advertising background, you need a really catchy call to action. And at first, when I said that, I was like, oh, people are going to think this is like hubris. Like, they're going to think that I'm full of myself. They're going to be like, who the hell is this? You know, they're going to be like, whatever. Like, this is so silly. And at first, I was afraid, honestly. I was afraid to put that. And now people just regularly introduce me as that. And that's words and actions that's words putting things to power. That's words putting things to action.
It touches on something I was about to bring up. You are speaking of manifestation.
Yeah.
How impactful has that kind of manifestation been on your life?
Oh my God. That goes back to what I was telling you about when I was in college and I was working full time and going to school full time. I was literally telling myself every single day, you can do this. You can do this. You're going to do this. You're going to graduate with as many A's as possible, all A's if possible, and you are capable. And I told myself that every day, and I did it. And that showed me that I could do it anytime I wanted to. And I'll give you another example. When I did GDQ, even not just a GDQ, but GDQX when I was at TwitchCon, I was literally terrified. Like, literally terrified. I got no sleep the night before my first shift, which was on that Friday. And I was afraid of making a mistake. I was afraid of reading a troll donation. I was afraid of like everything. But I went into that show and it's like almost like an outer body experience. I don't know how else to describe it other than it feels like my body is here and my mind is out here, and I'm watching myself from outside and I'm telling myself, you got to do it. You can't run away. You got to do what you're going to do, and you're going to get through it, and it's going to be fine. And it's almost like I stop thinking and I just do, and I'm just in the moment. But in that moment, I kept telling myself, you are going to be like the most amazing that you could possibly be, and this is going to be the best day ever. And I did. And I went into it, and everyone said that it was great. So whether or not that's really actually true, it doesn't really matter, because to me, I did the absolute best that I could because I told myself I would, and I did.
Do you think manifestation like that is the key to overcoming fears?
For me, it is. Not everybody is capable, but for me, it's the only way that I can deal with that. I put myself in intentionally difficult situations. I put myself in intentionally, scenarios that would intimidate others and scare others, because that is the way that I have to grow. That's the way that I need to grow. If I don't put myself in a situation where if I don't put myself in a situation where I'm going to grow from it, then it's like, what am I doing it for? What am I doing it for? I have to put myself in a situation that's going to give me new experiences, allow me to reach higher results every time I'm going to do it. So like, for example, I submitted stuff for PAX. Some of it got approved. Some of it didn't get approved. I reached out to former colleagues that I know still work in the games industry. And that took a lot of bravery, because you know, if you don't talk to people for a long time, they'll be like, oh, what do you just want something from me? Like, you know what it is? Like, you know what I mean? Like, people are like, oh, like, people just want something from. But I was like, nope, we're going to approach this and we're going to do it with gratitude, and we're going to, you know, tell people why this is important and ask for the things that you want, so that way you can get the things that you're looking for. And that's what I did. And now there are other panels that I'll be doing that I can't announce yet. That's going to be really, really cool for, I mean, for me, and I hope everybody else likes it. But for me, I think it's freaking awesome. But yeah, I think that that's extremely important. Like, and I think that in life, there's no rules that state you can't do the things that you want to do. Every day you have the opportunity to do something that you really want to do. Like, you have the opportunity to create the space or the reality that you want. Like, if I want to go out there and make a video and put it out there and just like put all my effort into it and try to make something happen from that, there are little steps in between. Like let's say, for example, one of my goals is to learn improv. I really want to take improv. I really want to do improv. I just want to get better at being funny and entertaining. Okay, my first step, Google search acting classes near me. Oh, I found one that offers a free first class. Okay, take the free first class. Then from that, continue to talk about it with other people. Oh, I have an interest in this. Now through that, I have an application that I'm going to put in for improv classes with like a really cool improv school. And then through that, there's another, like, there's the class that I took that now I found is affordable, and now I'm going to continue down that path. But that's because, like, I'm telling myself, you know what? Like, there was a time when I was really afraid to tell people that dream, that I want to learn how to act and I want to do those things. Like, I was really, really, really afraid to say those things out loud because I thought people would laugh at me, or they thought it was like, you know, stupid, or like, well, what are you going to do with that? And I realized that doesn't matter. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is what I want to do. Like, there's no like, oh, this is how life is supposed to be. You're supposed to do this at this time. There's a rule for this or whatever. And I feel like people hold themselves to these things that they feel like they have to do at a certain age, or they have to do at a certain point or whatever. And it's like, there's no rules that say that you cannot go to college or learn a new skill at whatever time or however you want to do it. There's nothing that is making you do that. You can do whatever you want. There's like, that's life. That's what I think. That's how I think every day.
It's led to some pretty big moments for you too. There was a Twitch promotion a couple of years back that put you on a billboard in Times Square.
Yeah.
What did that moment mean to you?
Man, it was something spectacular. I remember when I messaged my mom about that. And I said, Ma, I have to come back up to New York because they're putting me on a billboard in Times Square. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah. I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe it when I got that email. Like, I was like shaking. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is actually happening. To be on a billboard in my hometown, in the crossroads of the world, I must make a trip up to go and see this. And I think that that moment gave a lot of legitimacy to this career choice. It gave a lot of legitimacy to what I was doing. And not just internally to me, but externally to anyone that I wanted to work with and anyone that is in this space, you know? Like, not just like personally, but like, you know, for the industry as a whole. Like, it's like kind of cool that those moments can happen. So when they see that, people who stream on Twitch can have like a global impact. I think that that's like truly meaningful for the space as a whole.
Is there anyone you wish could have seen that?
Yeah, I wish my dad could have seen it. My dad had already passed at that point.
What do you think he would have said?
I don't know. When I was growing up, my dad always had this nickname for me, world famous. He told me that my whole life, world famous Ash. So I'm trying to make that happen.
Sounds like he did a little manifesting himself.
Yeah.
If you had $100,000 tax-free, and your only obligation was you had to spend it on your career, what would you do?
Very, very, very good question. If I could only spend it on my career as a broadcaster for Twitch, I would utilize, I would set aside a budget for travel, because traveling to conventions has made a big impact on me and what I have done. Meeting people face to face and getting people to see my work ethic in person has made a deep impact. So I would definitely set aside money for travel. I would invest in a lawyer, because we read contracts a lot and I want to make sure that I'm getting the best value out of the partnerships that I am a part of. I would also invest in classes for improv, for public speaking, and for if there's any kind of way that I can learn how to be a part of things like hosting, like things like Kind of Funny or IGN or, video game based live productions, Rooster Teeth, any of that kind of stuff, I would love to be a part of that. And I think I would also invest in hiring an editor and somebody that can do graphics and visuals for me, because those things are time intensive. And if I could have someone, if I could just give them my idea, I am good at giving people my concept, my sketches, my thoughts, and say, this is what I want you to do, create it for me. That would be a huge burden off of me. That would be a huge burden off of me. So that's how I would invest that money. And then I'd probably save about 40% of it and put it in a high yield savings so that it can continue to grow.
I'll allow it.
It's don't wish for more wishes.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Let's just say you could use it for more career stuff.
Yeah.
You touched on something I think that is really important that a lot of people underestimate in content creation. And it probably would relate to marketing and advertising as well. Time investment. At what point do you think it's worth it to start outsourcing the things that you do to others? How do you find that answer?
When you can afford it. When you can afford it. Like, obviously, a lot of people do their own things because of the lack of being able to afford it. But if you want this to be your career and you want to extend your reach consistently, and you want to extend your reach to the best of your ability, you will have those kinds of videos or, social media pieces ready. One thing that I do, that I've started doing, that has been a really cool test, is I started scheduling tweets. So all of the videos that I've been posting the last maybe week or so, I've taken clips And someone edited some video clips for me just out of the kindness of their heart. And I could not be more grateful to them. But I took those videos and then I started scheduling tweets. And I started scheduling them for when I'm normally asleep, which is like 10 in the morning or whatever. And it has created engagement even when I'm getting rest. And that has been really cool to see, you know, like that my tweets can still get, you know, pretty good engagement, even if it's not something that I just did in that moment, because sometimes like you capitalize off of whatever's trending in that moment or whatever. And those are important things to do too. But that has really, really helped me. And I think it's really important too to be able to have bite-sized consumable pieces of your content, so that way if I have to deliver an elevator pitch, I have those things ready. So like, for example, OTK is doing their top streamer competition that they did last year. And that's something that I'd love to apply to. And in order to apply to it, you have to create a video. You have to submit a video. And I know that the time commitment on recording a video, submitting a video, editing the video, all that stuff is going to be at least a couple of days. So if I had somebody that I could hire where all I have to do is film it and then they can pick the best part, because that's the other thing too, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you're the expert. Like, I can edit a video, but I'm sure that there are other people who can edit way better than I can, way faster than I can. But pretending that I will always be the expert in something is like, why am I lying to myself, you know? So if I had that kind of assistance, that would be huge. That would be huge. So, yeah. I think that's time, that learning how to balance the time is something that is always going to be a struggle. And that's kind of why I also said earlier about the learn to dance in the rain and not just wait for the storm to end kind of thing. Because like I said, in this space that we're in, there's always something new. Like, for example, right? Nintendo dropped Nintendo Direct is happening. Okay, now somebody who's really on top of their, like, I want to be a Nintendo influencer has to act in that moment. Whatever they were doing, they had to put that down and be like, okay, we're going to have a stream, or we're going to create a reaction video. We're going to do something relating to that topic, because that's what everybody's going to be talking about in that moment. So not capitalizing on that could be like a missed moment. But then you have to also realize like that's going to take time, resources. Like, that was a day that you probably had set aside for something else. But now you have to set it aside for this. And that other thing now gets backed up a day. So that's going to be constantly the struggle. That's the yin and the yang and the push and the pull of what we do. It's just a part of it.
Now, these kinds of videos you're posting, you said you noticed that they're getting engagement when you're asleep. And I imagine this is part of a larger growth strategy. What do you think, with the state of Twitch and content creation it is today, is the best way to grow?
Yeah. That is the $1 million question. That is the if somebody comes up with an answer to that, they're going to be like a billionaire, because that is the number one thing that content creators are trying to figure out. It's, do I constantly post on other platforms to bring people off of those platforms to my Twitch? Do I even still make Twitch my main focus anymore? Do I multi-stream? Do I, like, try to do like other outside sponsorships, like partner with really big brands? That way that brings a legitimacy to my platform and who I am as a creator. That's the very, very, very difficult question to ask and answer. Because there's not one way, right? Like, there's not one way. B, sometimes those moments are just lightning in a bottle moments. They just are. And once it happens, you have to ride that wave as it happens. You know what I mean? And there are some people who, you know, will maybe get the TikTok video that goes viral and has millions and millions of views. But then it's like, what do you do when you have those eyes afterwards? What do you do with it? I don't know. It's really difficult. I think that there has to be some kind of balance of posting off platform. There definitely has to be. Because, I mean, the inherent problem of you're not visible unless you're live, how do you solve that? Unless you start to build other social media aspects to Twitch within Twitch. So that way you're constantly keeping people engaged. But then at the same time, it's like, who constantly is engaged with one platform these days? I cannot think of any platform that I would singularly only be invested in and ignore the rest. Like, we're on Twitter, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on Instagram, we're on all of those things. And some people are a mix of whatever it is, you know? So it's very difficult, but I do think that you should consider, as a creator, should consider posting with some sort of consistency off platform, so that way people can find you and then be like, or at least have your email in your bio. At least have your email in your bio.
The pet peeve of all CMs.
Yeah. Have your email in your bio. And, or we talk about consistency and branding. One pet peeve that I have is if I search for you on Twitter and then I search for you on Instagram and I search for you on Twitch and all of your names are different, I give up. You're making it hard. You're making it too hard for me.
SEO, search engine optimization.
Don't do that. What kind of success do you expect to see if your name is different in every single platform?
It's a good point. So all right, so we just talked about your growth strategy here, and the question everyone wants the answer to. Here's the excuse I see thrown about all the time, and I want to know what you think about this. People just say we got to where we are because we're lucky. How important is luck?
Whew. Oh my God. I think, that just brings up so many emotions because, especially as a woman, I hear that quite often. You know, oh, it's easier for you because you're a woman, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's frustrating, but there are some aspects of it that are true. There are some aspects of it that are true. And the reason why I say that is because when somebody raids me, there's like 100, 200, 300 different channels that are on at the same time, even within that category. They could have literally picked anybody. So in that sense, I did win the lottery. I was lucky. They chose me. However, the odds are stacked more for me because of the way that I treat people, right? Like, if you greet people when they come in and they raid you, if you make them feel acknowledged, if you make them feel welcome, if you make them feel like, I really value your time, how many more times are they going to come back and raid you? So that's where luck meets preparation and success, right? You had that first lucky break the first time, but then because you were prepared for that moment and you had your elevator pitch ready, you had your way to address people ready, you're now more slated for success because you knew how to deal with that. There are moments where people get lucky. Ask anybody who works for TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. Tell me, how does the algorithm work? Break it down into science for me. Tell me exactly how it works.
Hamsters on a wheel.
Will any of them give you the same answer? Will any of them give you an answer that even makes sense in English language, like whatever language we're communicating in? Will it make sense in language? And is it something that you can predict with certainty every single time? You tell me the answer to that, and I will, man, that person will be a billionaire. Nobody has the answer. Nobody knows how algorithms work. Nobody knows how the FYP works. Even AI itself doesn't understand how AI works. Like, to some sort of degree, there is a randomness there. And when you watch like TikTok videos about like gurus, or this is what you got to do to achieve success, post 3 times a day and do this and use this hashtag and post at this certain time or whatever, somebody changes the algorithm, all of that advice is now obsolete. So that's why it's like, yeah, some of it could be luck, because you never know when your content is going to be featured on the FYP, or, picked up by maybe like Reddit, for example. And then it just like, everybody is like, oh my God, what is this? This is amazing. This is hilarious. This is funny. This is awesome. You never know when those moments are going to happen. But if you set yourself up to be prepared for when those moments happen, like, okay, somebody found my clip and then made like a thing on Reddit about it, and now everybody's like coming to my channel for it. Well, now how am I going to deal with this influx of eyes, right? Am I going to do the same thing that I've always done and just treat people like, oh, it's no big deal, whatever? Or am I now going to say, we have a new influx of eyes. How can I bring another level of creativity to whatever I'm doing? Whether that's, hey, let me take some time and upgrade my alerts. Let me figure out how to be more interactive with chat. Let me make sure, something even as small as that. Let me make sure that I have chat up on multiple screens, so that way I'm not missing anything that's going on, and really able to engage with what people are saying and people are doing. Like, what am I doing to make sure that if I am met with those kinds of things, like, I'm doing something about it and not just letting it be like oh man, I got all these eyes. Now I'm going to be famous. I just have to do the same thing that I'm always doing. It's going to work. No, because you weren't doing the same thing that you were always doing. Something changed. Something shifted. Like, you got attention on some place that you never usually get attention with. So like, for example, right? There was a time when I was posting on TikTok like all the time. Like, I did it because I thought it was fun. Like, I was just finding sounds and reacting to the sounds, or like filming something that was just silly, but also related to video games in some way. And some of them got really successful, and some of them didn't do any kind of numbers. But for the ones that were really super successful, and it did like bring people over from the platform, when people came into my channel from TikTok, I'd be like, oh my God, you came from TikTok? Thank you for taking the chance on coming over. Because I know it's a lot of steps, right? It's a lot of steps for you to, okay, I saw you on TikTok. Let me log into Twitch. Oh, what's my password? Oh, dang, I forgot. Oh, all right, it's this. Okay, we're logged in. Oh, I found this person's channel. Then I clicked OK on the rules, and now it allowed me to talk. Think about all those steps where failure was a possibility. I could have clicked off. I got tired. Oh, somebody distracted me. The cat's meowing at me for food or whatever. What am I going to do at that moment? Give people their payoff. Give people their return on investment. Do something unique. Do something interesting. Engage with them. Show them that they're valued. That's how I try to think about it.
So what are your favorite ways to capitalize on opportunities like that?
Being in the moment is really, really, really important, and then figuring out like, all right, okay, I got this moment of, okay, I'm hosting on stage. Okay, somebody believed in me and was like, oh, we want you to host on stage at TwitchCon. Okay, now that I know that I have that moment, how am I going to hype it up and make people see why it's something that they should also be excited about too? So let's talk about it in Discord. Let's post about it on Twitter. Yo, let me make some outfits so that way when I'm coming through, people remember me, like I'm looking good, I'm sounding good, whatever. Make it really exciting. Share afterwards why I was so excited about that. Share my gratitude to the people who hired me for that. That is extremely important. It is a step you must not skip. And with that gratitude, when people feel that gratitude and they see that gratitude, then they realize, okay, you know what? That did matter to that person. Let's think about working with them again. And then telling yourself that you deserved that, you killed it and you did a great job afterwards. And then utilizing those moments to be like, okay, now I'm gonna take control of what I do and utilize that for other things. So for example, reach out to other shows and be like, this is what I did. What can I do for you? That's how I do it. So for example, I reached out to a convention recently about some things that I would love to do for them and said, this is what I've done. What can we do together? And we'll see where that goes. That's how I capitalize on it.
You included gratitude in that. How do you express gratitude, especially when it is extended over a period of months or years?
Sincerely. You express it sincerely. So if somebody hired me for something, after the job is done, I say to them, thank you for thinking of me for this opportunity. You could have went with anybody, and here's an experience that I received from that helped me. And when you show people their impact on you, that allows them to see why it was so important for you. So if I tell somebody, hey, thank you so much for hiring me for this thing. When I did X, Y, and Z, it showed me the awesome skills that I had in this thing. And that really meant a lot to me. So thank you for that. Tell them what you got out of the experience and why it was important to you, and be sincere, and you will see how big of an impact that has. When you let people know their impact on you, it's a great way to show a human connection.
Okay, let's hit some harder questions here if you're down.
Sure.
Do you have time for that?
Yeah.
Okay. Those are good answers, by the way.
Thank you.
As an ambassador, you were chosen to represent the best of what Twitch has to offer. You're viewed by many as a leader on the platform, right? Do you find it hard to balance being a leader and staying positive when many others seem unhappy with Twitch's decisions?
That's a very good question. I am definitely impacted by the way people feel, especially if they have strong feelings about things that they're worried about or things that they're concerned about. But those are opportunities. Those are opportunities for us. So let's say Twitch Twitch recently made an announcement that prices are going to go up for subs in certain countries. That's a very hugely and deeply impactful change. Money is hard to come by nowadays. People struggle for basic things like groceries and living spaces. And any kind of feedback that we receive about that, whether it is emotional and off base, comes from a place of truth. So you have to be able to parse those things, and it's not easy. It is not easy. And it's definitely easy to take things personally, right? But that's why it's extremely important to me, and the thing that I remind myself of why I keep this a business space, right? Because once you keep it a business space, you realize that feedback is not personal. It's not about me. It's not about the thing. It's just about the thing. It's just about how this thing impacts them. So yeah, it can be difficult, but I'm extremely like fortunate to be able to have the space and the voice that I have. So when I hear those kinds of things, I share them. Like I definitely share them, make a user voice, talk to people, find out how they're feeling about this kind of thing. And then if there are conduits where I can share that feedback directly to people at Twitch, I'll make sure to do that. And it can be difficult, but you know what I've taught myself? Okay, you know how like people go on Twitter and they just like say like it's like a space where people talk into the void or whatever. I think that I remind myself that that's how people treat it. And then I also remind myself that we talked about the algorithm. We don't know how it works. However, we do know that if we interact with a particular thing, it will show us more of that thing.
Right.
So I interact with the things that I want to see more of. So if somebody is just being disparaging and just like, wanting to dunk on something for the sake of dunking and not wanting to be, they're not trying to be constructive with their feedback, I don't interact with those things. Therefore, I see less of them. But then for the people that I do trust, that maybe sometimes they have like feedback that's like sounding a little bit more emotional, but it is valid because it is a real concern, then I end up seeing more of those things. And those things I will read and try to parse like, okay, how can I turn this into something that we can take, something we can improve to? Like, how do I take this and then use that as something we can improve based on the things that they're trying to say? So, yeah, it's not easy all the time. So, it's just a part of the job. It's a part of the job.
If you were in a room with everyone you ever met, who would be the one person you look for?
Like living or dead?
Yeah. Everyone you ever met.
Yeah, I'd look for my dad.
What comes to mind first about them that shaped who you are today?
The fact that he was always really proud of me. And that he would always talk to his friends about everything that I was doing. Like, after my dad passed and I was meeting like all of his friends, everybody said the same thing. Your dad always talked about you. All the time. And I knew that. Because we always had a really great relationship. We did. I could count on one hand of like the times that we ever like actually got into like a disagreement or an argument. And even if we did get into a disagreement, it wasn't really that serious, I just never had that experience with my dad. But yeah, he just always was encouraging me and always told me, you're smart, he knows I was going to do great things, and just always encouraged me.
Do you think he inspired you to be as hardworking as you are?
I think that, yeah. And I think that he's probably the biggest reason why I don't feel like there's any limits on anything I can do. For sure.
Is there anyone out there you wish to prove wrong?
No, we don't got time to deal with that kind of nonsense, We don't got time for that. Just please.
Don't put your energy towards it, right?
Yeah, we don't got time for that. We got time for making ourselves proud of what we do. We don't got time for the haters.
Is that your response to all the haters out there? You just no time of day, no energy?
Yeah, why would I want to waste my energy on that? Like, that's why, that's what they want. That's what they want. That's what anybody who is out there to tell you that you can't accomplish whatever it is, that's a projection, and that is not a you problem. That is not a you problem. You don't have to worry about that. That is not a you problem.
What is the meaning of life for Ash?
The meaning of life for Ash is to live every day and be happy with the person that you are and do your best. You just got to do your best. That's all you're capable of. And do your best and do your best to help others. And do something that just you can feel proud of, you know? If I made a piece of art today, I'm really glad that I took that time to make that piece of art. If I wrote today, man, I just did something that's going to be shared with other people. Did I stream today? Okay, then I hung out with people that I got to have fun with and maybe give them a laugh or two. Did I spend some time with Bobby? Yeah. That moment, sometimes that quiet moment is what we need to embrace the moments where it's like super busy.
Touching on creation there. How important do you think it is? Because this was kind of tied to what you said was the daily meaning. How important is it for you to create for yourself versus others?
Oh my God. It's like meditative. It is extremely important. I think that that's my way of building knowledge. Creating is my way of exercising my brain and giving myself an outlet to think in ways that, like, breaking a limit. I used to be really hard on myself when it came to drawing. I always thought that there was a way you were supposed to draw and a way that things were supposed to look, and if it didn't have a certain kind of polish, that it was worthless. And recently, I'm talking about like within the last few years, I started drawing and painting more and getting an outcome that I didn't think I was possible, that I was capable of getting. Like my renderings actually look like the things that I imagined them to look like, or they came close to something that felt like what I was seeing in real life. And I realized in doing that practice that I was teaching myself a lot of things, like spatial relationships or color relationships or, perspective and like all that kind of stuff. And also in doing it, it allowed me to lose myself in the act of creating the art or creating whatever it is I was creating. And that taught me a lot of skills about just being patient with myself and being excited about the things that I was excited to create. Like, I think that a lot of people don't give themselves, if they gave themselves the credit of doing things like that and being more in the moment and allowing themselves to make mistakes, they will find that every day is like there's so much possibility for the things you can do every day if you just allow yourself to be okay with like, oh, I painted this thing and it came out ugly, but that's okay. I can make another one, I feel like I learned a lot in that. And yeah, creating art is like a meditation, and it helps me a lot emotionally, and I feel like that's our way to really like express just like think outside the box and just kind of like, I don't know, it's like kind of like reading a book to me. I don't know, like, I feel like when I read, like I don't know, maybe I gain like, if this was like Morrowind, I gain like one intelligent point or whatever. Art is like that for me.
How do we practice that giving credit to ourselves for the things we're creating?
I feel like it's really, really, really tough for people to create something that they're unhappy with and be okay with it. I feel like you have to do it. You just have to do it. It can't be one of those things where it's like, oh, I don't know what's right and what's wrong. Like, you gotta like just allow yourself the space to like look at a piece of paper, put a mark on it, not feel precious about it, not feel scared about it, and just do it. Will do so much for your self-confidence too, by the way. If you like take a piece of paper and just start like doing stuff, instead of being like, oh well, what if I do something and it's like ugly? Like, it's like, who cares? Just do it, I think it just takes practice. It's not easy. It takes practice.
Have you ever made something you were really proud of that you never showed to anyone?
Whoa. Yeah. I probably have some artwork that I don't think I've ever really showed to people.
Why?
I don't know. Sometimes artwork can be real personal. Not that it's like, oh, if I saw this, like, I'll be like, oh, this is weird, Ash. It's just more like, some things have got to be for me. You know what I mean? Some things have just got to be for me, And maybe somebody else might not see it as like a big deal, but for me it is, So I think it's really important to have some things for just you.
For you, is art a conduit to help you express things you can't put to words?
I never really thought about it that way. I guess my art was never really, like, I never really approached it that way. It was more like, I really love this thing, so I want to do it in my own way. Like, I really love, like, a video game character, so I really want to paint it. I think that one thing that I don't engage with, but I want to engage with more, is journaling. Like, one thing that I've been doing recently is writing for Anne's Dank magazine. And ever since I was young, even like in elementary school days and all that kind of stuff, I was always embarrassed about my writing ability. I thought that I didn't write well. I thought that everything I wrote sounded childish or unintelligent. And I started writing for Anne's Dank magazine as a way to exercise those skills. And I've been enjoying it. And an extension of that is that I want to start journaling, because I guess I was always embarrassed as a kid to write in a journal. Not because if somebody read it, like not for that reason. Like, if somebody read my journal, like, that would embarrass me way less. It was just the fact of I wanted to write, but I was afraid that my writing was going to sound childish or unsophisticated. That would be more embarrassing to me. The fact that they thought, like, they would think that I was not intelligent. And that was a big barrier for me. A really huge emotional barrier. So now I want to conquer that.
What do you want the future to say about you?
That Ash worked really, really hard and achieved some really cool things. That's like what I want people to know about me. That I work really hard and I care about what I do. That's all I want people to know about me.